Daily Devotion with Pastor Balla for October 14, 2021, from Psalm chapter 71, God Comforts His People, Part 1. Have you ever experienced such a major time of distress that you couldn't even speak or sleep or do anything? If so, you may be able to relate to what the psalmist who finds himself in extreme time of distress. So let's start with Psalm chapter 77, verse 1. I cry aloud to God, and He will hear me. The psalmist starts on the right path by crying out to God, but now let's continue on in verse 2. In the day of my trouble, I seek the Lord. In the night, my hand is stretched out without wearying. My soul refuses to be comforted. It's interesting that the soul of the psalmist is not comforted even when the psalmist is seeking or crying out to the Lord. The psalmist knows where to find the solution. It is in God Almighty. But it does take time for the pain to eventually go away. The pain is not going to go away quickly, especially after a fast prayer. Verse 3. When I remember God, I moan. When I meditate, my spirit faints. This is serious stuff, so to speak. Moaning even while remembering God? The pain is so great. It's sort of like going to church and saying, I got nothing out of it, because your mind was so focused on the pain. However, the psalmist isn't an unbeliever, just overwhelmed by the distress. Verse 4, you hold my eyelids open, and I am so troubled that I cannot speak. Here the psalmist is recognizing that it is God who's keeping his eyes open. But the shock is so great that the psalmist still can't even speak. Verse 5, I consider the days of old, the years long ago. I said, let me remember my song in the night. Let me meditate in my heart. Then my spirit made a diligent search. Here's the key. The psalmist remembers the past deliverances and actions of God, and this is more than remembering the good times per se, but remembering God's promises and God's deliverances and keeping those promises. Verse 7, will the Lord spurn forever and never again be favorable? Has His steadfast love forever ceased? Are His promises at an end for all time? Has God forgotten to be gracious? Has He in anger shut up His compassion? Based on the past promises and fulfillment of those promises of God, the psalmist is using these rhetorical questions to help him with the negative thinking that's in his mind at the moment. Has God forgotten? The answer to these questions is all an obvious no. But will the psalmist's negative thinking accept the logic of these questions and receive comfort from God? Verse 10, then I said, I will appeal to this, to the years of the right hand of the Most High. It is sort of like the psalmist is forcing himself to accept the idea that God is there for him, even in this great time of distress, all based on the historical performance of God. This is good for us to keep in mind because very often, which sometimes happens to us, very tragic things may happen. And we may think that we're the only ones who have ever felt this way. And so our sinful nature sort of then takes up a grudge and then wants to push God out of our lives through our thoughts and minds and almost like numbing the mind. So the psalmist is going to hang on to the promises of God, those fulfilled by God in the past, and he is not going to allow this negative thinking to consume him. Join me again tomorrow as we get to continue with Psalm chapter 77. God's peace and many blessings be with you, and thank you for listening, and please take an opportunity to share this message with others. If you have enjoyed these daily devotions, please consider making a donation to Peace Lutheran Church, 24024 West Main Street, Plainfield, Illinois, 60544. Thank you again for listening.